Hello divas and dudes, and welcome back to Powerhouse Bakery in the Power Cooking School. Today I want to show you something that is great for breakfast, lunch, even dinner. You know, oftentimes we hear Brenner is a great option when you don't feel like doing a lot of cooking. And so that's when you do breakfast items for dinner, or really any meal. And so one item that is kind of an all-around favorite is the incredible edible egg. A lot of times people ask me, you know, are eggs good for you? And I always try to tell them, absolutely, eggs are a great source of protein. They do have some cholesterol, but actually our bodies are great at managing cholesterol. And as far as total fats go, the egg is not very high in total fat. And that's what truly would affect our dietary cholesterol and our serum cholesterol. So if dietary cholesterol is not very high in a food, it's not as important as the total fats that are high in a food. And that's what causes the serum cholesterol to go up. So saturated fat in the diet isn't as good because it makes the serum cholesterol go up. So anyway, the egg is a great source of protein as well as healthy fats. So what I'm going to make for you today is the eggs and greens frittata. And it's a great way to use maybe some spinach that isn't in its most perkiest form. This has been in our fridge for a few days and it's a little bit wilty. We could probably use it, but at Powerhouse Bakery we do the cook-chill method. So what we try to do is provide meals for folks that last at least 7 days in their fridge. So whenever the lettuce gets a little bit wilty or the spinach, we try to repurpose it. And nothing could be better than using it in an eggs and greens frittata. So what I'm going to do is add greens, both the spinach and one of my most favorite herbs, which is the arugula. And we're going to add in some artichoke hearts. So if you saw my last cooking segment where we did the Buddha bowl and you ran out and got some artichoke hearts and you didn't use them all for your salad, well, now here's a way to use the rest of the jar, because this is going to be a really fun way to add another layer of flavor and texture to our salad, to our eggs and greens frittata. And much like a salad, what we want to do is have it beautiful. We want the eyes to eat first. We want to make sure there's lots of different vegetables, both for the nutrient quality as well as the texture and of course the flavor. So in addition to the greens and the artichoke hearts, I'm going to sprinkle in some fresh tomatoes on the top for the bright red color. I'm going to add some fantastic cheeses. We've got 2 to add to our frittata today. One is some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. It's a hard cheese. It's going to have lower amounts of lactose. So if people have a problem with lactose, maybe a hard cheese will be easier to tolerate. But remember, you can always use a dairy-free cheese. There's some really good ones now out on the market, and it's worth checking them out. This is a hard cheese again, Parmesan. The other cheese I'm going to show you today is our specialty here at Powerhouse Bakery, and it's my very own blend. We call it the PHB cheese. So it's cottage cheese, goat cheese, and some garlic. So I picked this trio because goat cheese is loaded with flavor. It doesn't take a lot to get a lot of really nice sublime flavors of a little bit sour, a little bit sweet. It's just a great cheese. And then I added cottage cheese because it's very high in protein. And so always trying to figure out how to get more plant-based or even the cow or goat-based proteins from the dairy sources are really great. Helps for the vegetarian to get more protein. Also, it's just a creamy way to add some protein for a regular all-encompassing diet. So that's our PHB cheese. And some people that don't like cottage cheese, when you whip it up, you can't tell it has funny little curdles, so it's really nice to layer. And then I also roasted some zucchini. So again, if you have some extra veggies laying around or just starting to maybe be less perky in your crisper, grill them up or even roast them in the oven, and they're a great way to add in extra veggies to your frittata. Okay, so one other thing I'm going to show you is I always like to add a little bit of intrigue. So what I'm going to do with this particular frittata is I'm going to add a little bit of jalapeno, a little bit of chopped turmeric, and some fresh garlic. So I'm going to get started with those chops right now. And what I recommend you do is you can grill these in a skillet. If you want to soften the flavors a little bit, just once you chop them, you're going to put them into a skillet and let them brown just a little bit. For time's sake, I won't do that today, but I just want you to know it's a great option. I don't always do it, but it's something that is very nice to add a little bit of browning. So notice when I'm doing my chopping, I'm a real stickler on using good cutting skills, and it's really important to use the last section of your knife when you're doing your cutting, and keep your eyes focused on your veggies, and I'm using my left hand to push the veggie right into the blade of the knife, scooping them together, and I get a nice little chop for my turmeric. Also notice that I did not peel it. I think it's more trouble than it's worth, and as long as it's clean, you're just fine. Won't hurt to peel it, but you take away some of the nutrients, and it's such a tiny little root that sometimes you're left with not very much. So there's my about tablespoon and a half of turmeric, and then I'm going to do the same thing for my garlic. So when you're chopping your garlic, the first thing you want to do is liberate one of the little cloves, and then with the flat side of the knife, push down, and it gets all that paper that comes right off of it. There's other tricks. You can shake them in a brown bag, and sometimes that gets the paper off, but then you're kind of tempted to peel a lot, and honestly I think the garlic does much better if you just peel it as you go. So again, I'm going to use good knife skills, chop. Notice that my index finger is not out on the knife. I pull everything in nice and tight. Good biomechanics are also important, so my weight is evenly distributed on both feet, and of course I've got a nice little kitchen pad to keep the biometrics good on standing nice and tall. Okay, so I got my garlic in there, and then one more item, I'm going to use my jalapeno. So if I want to modify how hot it gets, I'm going to take the seeds out. So I'm going to use 1/2, and try not to touch the seeds if you can, because they can certainly cause burning if you have a cut. So I'm going to use just half of my jalapeno and do some chopping on that one. And again, if you wanted to do a quick saute of these veggies, I think it would be a wonderful addition. But notice that I'm not going to saute my spinach. I'm going to put it right into my eggs and greens frittata raw. If you decide to use a harsher green like kale, you might want to soften it first, or at least finely chop it. If you have leftover asparagus, it works beautifully in an eggs and greens frittata. But leave it whole. You don't feel like you have to chop it. When you cut your frittata, you'll certainly be cutting through that veggie. So you can use green beans, asparagus, even some chard or some beets. All of those go beautifully in an eggs and greens frittata, and it's just a great way to use up some veggies. Okay, so I've chopped up my jalapeno, my garlic, and my turmeric. So those are going to be wonderful ways to add in some flavor. The next thing I have to do is get my eggs cracked. So in this size of casserole, which is about a 9 by 13, I'm going to add 12 eggs. And so I'm going to break them into a container first and make sure, oh, that guy got away from me, didn't he? I'm going to make sure I don't get any shells before I put it into my other dish. If you're lucky enough to have a friend that has farm eggs, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. But all eggs are certainly loaded with the nutrients that I've mentioned. Saturated fat is easy for our bodies to tolerate. So definitely use low-fat cheese if you'd like, and definitely be careful with added butters and other fats. But the egg is a great source of protein. It's probably the most easily digested protein also. So if you ever have a delicate stomach, or you're healing after surgery or not feeling good, an egg is usually a great food. You can cook it different ways, but when your immune system is compromised, it is a good idea to fully cook the egg. So make sure you don't have it over easy or sunny side up, where part of that white, and especially the yolk, is not fully cooked. In this recipe that I'm doing today, we are going to fully cook it. You're going to preheat your oven to 325 and try to get your casserole right in the center of your oven, and it'll cook the very best. Okay, so I'm getting close. I'm going to add probably a little bit more eggs. I didn't quite get my full bundle, but I wanted to show you what we do next. So I'm going to be pretty generous now with the olive oil. This is just a very light olive oil. I only use extra virgin here at Powerhouse Bakery. But you could use rapeseed oil, or you could use one of the nut oils that I had mentioned in some of the other classes. But olive oil, I think, is really a nice one. So I'm going to use about 1/4 cup, which is like 4 tablespoons. So I'm going to really get it well coated. So I'm just going to swirl it all around and make sure it gets up on the top and the sides of my my casserole, because we don't want that eggs and greens frittata to stick. So now I'm going to go ahead and pour in my egg, just mixing it up. I don't have to really whip it. I just want to make sure that the whites and the yolks are pretty well mixed together. Pour that in, and we're going to add our veggies and our spices. Alright, so because this is a little bit bigger pan, I'm going to add a couple more eggs. And of course the egg sizes vary, right? If you get a medium-sized egg or an extra large egg, and one of my wonderful clients gave us some of her farm eggs, and we had several that were double yolks, which were absolutely amazing. The nutrient quality of a brown egg is no different than a white egg. So even though they're really pretty, and we even got some lightly green eggs from Julie, but of course it doesn't change the nutrient quality. What does change the nutrient quality though is what the diet is of the hen. So we talked about this a little bit in one of my nutrition classes for you divas, and what's really important is that that chicken get fed a well-rounded diet. A chicken truly is not an herbivore. They like to eat all kinds of critters, and so having a free range is always a good thing, but it doesn't mean that a caged egg isn't a good one. It just means that hopefully they fed them a really good diet. So what I've done now is I put my egg in my casserole. I'm going to add some salt. So here's my Himalayan sea salt, and I'm going to just do a little pinch across. You can always add more, but truly eggs do need some salt. So I did about 1/4 teaspoon in that little over a dozen eggs. And then here I'm adding some beautiful lavender buds. Thanks to our wonderful diva, Miss Judy. She shared some lavender buds with me, which I think are so pretty. I'm just going to do a little wow factor by adding those in. I'm also adding in some hemp hearts. Again, I like to add in those mighty seeds everywhere I can. And now I'm going to start to add in my greens. So here's that spinach. I'm going to start to really layer it in. And oftentimes when I have new folks in my bakery and they're making my frittata, they kind of go easy on the veggies, and I always tell them, load them up. So it's just enough egg to hold all the veggies together is what I like to say. So I'm going to really tuck them in there. We do want to make sure they get moist with the egg. Now I'm going to put some arugula on top. There we go, as long as it gets nice and moist. Next, I'm going to add my next layer. So here's the artichoke hearts, and I'm going to layer each one so that basically when I do the cuts, in this pan I'm probably going to get about 6 servings. So make sure I spread out those artichoke hearts so everybody gets a little nibble. My wonderful mother-in-law grows artichokes, and they're the most beautiful plants. I hope you get to see one day. Alright, so there we go, artichoke hearts. And now I'm going to add the tomatoes, sprinkle those on the top. I'm going to tuck all those greens in just a second, but I really want you to see how beautiful the layers come together. We're going to be finishing off with the cheese too, and so it gives it a beautiful crispy top. Alright, so that's about enough. And now I'm going to put on my PHB cheese. So I'm going to start with this scooper. And I love to have these little extra scoops just popping up on the top. And this is adding extra protein. It's adding some wonderful flavor from that goat cheese. So it's so much fun. Alright, there is my goat cheese. And now I'm going to add in my zucchini. So just adding those layers as I go. When you cut into this, it's going to be so beautiful. With the zucchini, I did season it lightly with some fresh thyme and a little bit of garlic and salt. You could certainly add some fennel to this. It's one of my favorite herbs to use as well. So I'm going to get little bits all throughout. That looks like it's about enough. And I'm going to put in my little chunks of, again, this would be sauteed if you'd like, of my garlic and turmeric, and a little bit of jalapeno. So you can serve this as a brunch. You don't have to heat it up. It's actually really nice once you cook it to serve at room temperature. So I definitely invite you to experiment with this. In a future life, when I used to own a catering company, this was one of our most popular dishes, was to serve the eggs and greens frittata. And it was easy because you could just eat it with your fingers, and it was loaded with veggies. All right, here is my next layer, which is all that beautiful cheese. You could also make this lower in fat by just using egg whites. It's not as pretty, so even if you use egg whites, I would suggest still having some yolks. But again, if you're really conscientious about trying to lower all fat, you could do that and use a fat-free cheese as well. So now with the flat knife, I'm just going to go around and make sure I get all the edges of those veggies nestled into the egg. Tuck them all in. Finish it off with some fresh ground pepper. And there we have eggs and greens frittata ready for the oven. So again, it's going to be about 350 for about 35, maybe 40 minutes. Just watch it because you just want it to cook long enough to let the eggs get solid. If you know your oven is a pretty hot oven, I would say lower the temperature and just keep an eye on it because you don't want it to overcook. Isn't that beautiful? Come by Powerhouse Bakery and I'll share a bite with you. See you guys soon.